A simplistic casual game studio simulator which doesn't do anything new but executes the basics well. Simulators based on running businesses and teams seem to have become incredibly commonplace, with the likes of game studios, racing teams, prisons, and just about anything else you can boil down into the formula. This is Game Corp DX, one which follows the recipe to the letter. You have a building which you need to fill with equipment, and staff which you need to train for the specific roles. This one is a relatively casual simulation, as you can't really go too far wrong with your decisions. There is no story to speak of, as it is simply a progression through the ranks of various games companies which crop up throughout your playtime, all of which have names which are spoofs of existing companies such as Electronic Pop-Tarts and Double Pine. Guess who they are? The tutorial in many ways runs throughout the entire game for this one, as the transition from the explicit instructions on what to do next kind of fade into the brief hints on what you should be heading towards next. It's pretty standard stuff. You're given a little studio to start off with, and have to hire some men in order to start producing your first title. But with people comes the need for food and water, which they will need to routinely grab throughout their working day. The main thing you pick up is that you need to have a balance of training and working facilities, as the training will enable you to build a technically more demanding game, while experienced workers will produce a better quality of work. This means that you need to have a core work team producing your games while you have a couple left on the side to learn the new programming language, or the new piece of design software. This is pretty easy to manage when you're starting out, as you can keep an eye on all of your crew. But once you get into the latter stages of the game, you'll find that it becomes a hard balance between letting your experienced guys come off the job to train them up so they can produce more advanced games, while your trained personnel will produce worse games. It's quite well balanced, and unless you put a completely useless team together on a project which no one actually wants, you'll at least break even. So once you've finally got your main workforce back on the job, your skill set is well distributed. There's also other factors which can affect the speed and quality that your game is produced at, such as plants and statues dotted around the office, day and night cycles which routinely happen, and a variety of different traits which may mean your staff fall asleep at work. A nice addition to the other fact is that once an in-game year has passed, there is an awards ceremony which runs between you and your rival games developers, and the winning awards will give you little perks for your team, such as reduced costs or higher quality of game. That pretty much covers the entire game from start to finish. It's just variating between those tasks to complete the little job that it has displayed on the screen to move on to the next step until you reach the end. It's not exactly demanding, but I found it to be really addictive once I was rolling. Graphics wise, I like the fact that although they've taken on the simplistic graphical style, they're not your run-of-the-mill pixelated blobs. They have a little bit of flair, particularly the characters which each have their own stereotypical clothing and facial hair. This can only really be appreciated once you've started to pick up some developers that you might actually recognise, the likes of Peter M, Sid M, and of course Gabe N. I wonder who they might be, each of which carry a likeness to those they're based on. Sound-wise, if you're as absorbed as I was when concentrating on what to do next, you'll hardly even notice anything more than the tapping of keys throughout the day and the soft tingling soundtrack prattling on in the background, albeit inoffensively. As I say, I found this game really quite addictive. I found myself getting 100% completion in a little under 4 hours in 2 sittings. Admittedly, I was essentially running the game at 3 times speed from the beginning, as it didn't seem to really matter if you missed the beat a little bit. But I was thoroughly enjoying it as I went through, and I didn't really stop to think about the next step a lot. I automatically knew what I wanted to do, and it does become almost a set path as you set them off on a project and you manage the training until they're done. Occasionally stopping to either take on a building session to rearrange your office more effectively, or to see what awards are piling up for you. I tended to not even check on how I was doing compared to the other companies, so the awards created my basis on what I was going to do for the next year. Game Corp DX is really cheap for what you get, as it's a little harmless game which you can probably come back to in the future just to poodle around in and have a laugh. It also comes with a really weird little free game called Thank You the Game 3, which is amusing if nothing else. It does absolutely everything that you'd want from a game studio management sim, and at minimal cost. It's worth giving it a shot at least.